Okay, I have a request, please. Can we please stop romanticizing grooming? It's that simple. I recently saw a small TradWife Instagram account being posted on the TradWife's Snark subreddit, and I decided to go and have a look at her profile for myself and found myself completely appalled by how much she normalized grooming and child abuse because of her story about the way she was groomed as a teenager and how she romanticizes it and writes about it as being this big epic love story. Now, I was in two minds about whether to make this video, and I've kind of gone back and forth and been working on this for a few weeks. Because the thing is, this woman is a content creator. Her name's Kendra, by the way. She is a content creator, as in she makes reels, she is trying to get engagement, she's using hashtags to, get people to view her stories. She is actively trying to reach a larger audience. She's not just an individual posting family photos. She's actively making content with the intention of having the public view it. However, she is a very small account with only about 1,000 followers. That said, her reels have been getting at times tens of thousands of views, but she's still not exactly well known yet. She's not like a larger creator like, Girl Defined, Paul and Morgan, Carissa Collins, and the others I speak about. I'm also very aware that with a channel of my size, even though my views fluctuate, sometimes they can be in the millions, sometimes they're just in the tens of thousands. So I never quite know how many people are going to see my videos because with any channel, I go through peaks and troughs, that's normal. That said, I know I have the potential to be influential in sending more people to view her content, so I want to be really careful in how I speak about her. I also think it's really important to acknowledge that while her content is incredibly problematic in that she's trying to normalize and romanticize really damn harmful behavior, she is also the victim in this situation. She is the one who was groomed by an older man, and it's kind of not her fault that she thinks this way. So I think there's a way that we can be sensitive to her as a victim and still call out the content itself for being dangerous. In summary, I think it's important to talk about this topic and debunk her content. However, I don't want to risk sending hate her way as an individual. So I have decided throughout this video not to include her username or any identifying features like that. I am just going to call her Kendra because that's her name, but I'm not going to give you her username or direct you to her Instagram account or anything, because at the end of the day, this is a real woman's life, and while she is posting publicly on the internet, we still need to be kind. So let's take a look at the actual content and discuss this. Kendra has had her Instagram account for a while, but she only recently decided to start using it along with a Facebook page she created to start talking about her life as a stay-at-home mother, wife, and Christian. She's posting public content for other mums, other Christians, and generally that sounds fine, right? At first, it all looked pretty normal. She seems like a good mum from what I've seen, which is more than we can say for some fundies, Carissa Collins. She's definitely not promoting harmful parenting advice like, say, for example, Michael and Debbie Pearl do. She doesn't seem to be forcing her kids to be constantly in her content, again, like Carissa Collins. So that's all good there. Her Christian content is not to my taste, but didn't seem too harmful, It's mostly just her posting little videos of her annotated Bible, sharing Bible quotes on a few of her posts. Again, all good there, nothing really problematic. And unlike a lot of fundy content creators, she doesn't at this moment seem to be homophobic or transphobic or racist or overtly misogynist like, Girl Defined, Paul and Morgan, and so on. So, what's the issue? The issue is that her husband groomed her when she was a 15-year-old child, and she's writing about this experience like it was this epic love story, and other people should aspire to have a relationship like this, and it's completely normal, and yeah, it's okay if adult men groom children. So her Instagram bio describes herself as a young mum with 5 kids and 10 years of marriage. She calls herself a real creator. She says she is 26, a wife of almost 10 years. Yes, make note of that. Lost a daughter, found my purpose, homeschool, creative, married and flirting, raw faith, a little spice, and a lot of grace. I kind of do get a little bit of wannabe Bethany Beal vibes, but there we go. So far she hasn't actually posted any sex-related content, so I'm not going to comment on that. But yeah, the thing to take note of there is she is 26 and she has been married for 10 years. And this is where the concern around her content arose because she started making content about her marriage and basically bragging about how she was groomed by her now husband from when she was just 15 and he was in his 20s. She is, just to reiterate, even though she's a smaller creator now, she's really trying to push and become a bigger content creator while summarizing her content as, hey, if you're into messy motherhood, spicy but modest marriage talk, Jesus, homeschool chaos, or the fact that I got married at 17, welcome, you're in good company. So along with trying to be a public figure and make public content like this, she is really pushing to try and normalize grooming teenagers and child marriage, which is super, super concerning. You know, I was sat thinking while I was researching this video, because I've just got back, well, not just got back, a week ago I got back from photographing Tramlines, which is a music festival in Sheffield, 3 days. It was really damn amazing, really damn intense. I was doing it all with a sprained ankle, so it was a lot of pressure and a lot of pain, but I got some amazing photos which I'm still going through and editing. But I started researching this video before I went, and then I went, had my little break, and I've been working on it again since I got back. And it gave, having that little bit of time off gave me time to like really think and question and just be like, well, the question that was like on my mind was, yeah, so it seems to me that a lot of these like TradWife and Fundy influencers are victims of grooming. Kendra is not the only one. I've seen story after story after story of this. And I started to think, why? What makes them such vulnerable targets? But then I realised it's not that TradWives are more likely to be groomed. I think it's the other way around. It's that children who are groomed in this way in a very religious setting are more likely to become TradWives, right? And are more likely to become online influencers around that content because they were vulnerable in the first place. They were easy targets. And once they became the targets of these groomers, they were often stopped doing things like finishing their education or being able to get a job or anything. From literal childhood, all they could do was be someone's wife. So in the nicest way, a lot of them didn't get a chance to develop any other skills or actually get an education or do anything else with their life. So they have no choice but to become these Fundy influencers because it's kind of all they have in their life. It's the only skills they have, it's the only experience they have, and that's really damn sad. But yeah, take Kendra for example, right? So her husband met her at church when she was just 15 years old. He was in his 20s and he spent the next year grooming her. He proposed to her when she was just 16 and then he waited until just after her 17th birthday to actually marry her. From meeting her at 15 to 18 months later when she just turned 17, he groomed her and married her. She finished being homeschooled while she was married, a whole year of that. So education really wasn't a priority for her at that time at all. She never got a chance to get a job outside of working for his company and him. She never got a chance to go into further education because the adult man who groomed her, who was now in his mid to late 20s, got her pregnant. And while still a teenager, she had to deal with pregnancy and becoming a mother. She then, very sadly, had to deal with baby loss when she was still basically barely an adult herself, which is horrific and heartbreaking. Now she's 26 years old and she's got limited education, very little work experience, no skills outside of her husband and kids. She's got 4 kids to look after. She has very little time for anything else. In the nicest way, what else can she do? Create content online about her life like this, because she's not really hireable. And again, I don't say any of this to insult her, I say it from a place of concern. That said, there is a little confusion about her working status, because all of her like reels and online content and social media stuff is all about like, I'm a stay-at-home mum, in me. But at the same time, she's also listed as working for her husband's concrete pouring business. Apparently that's a whole business. The website says that Kendra is the co-founder of this business and is the organizational powerhouse behind the scenes. As the operations manager, Kendra handles the financial aspects of the business, ensuring everything runs smoothly and efficiently. Kendra's commitment to the business success is evident in her tireless work to keep everything running smoothly. So which is it, Kendra? Are you a tireless worker and an organizational powerhouse operations manager, or are you just a stay-at-home mum who spends all day playing with her kids wearing a blanket? Because you're trying to portray both in different settings and something isn't adding up. I also did have to laugh at the business's website. where they claim their core values are family and integrity, from the man who groomed a 15-year-old. So I say all this to kind of give context because I'm not sure how much the whole trad wife thing is a persona for her, because she knows it has the potential to make her a lot of money off, right-wing extremists who love to see women oppressed. But what we do know is that whether she really is a trad wife or an organisational powerhouse doesn't really matter. The truth of the matter is, she was groomed at just 15 years old. That was very real, it happened, and she doesn't even seem to understand how problematic it is, and she's now trying to normalise this for others with content that she is trying to reach a large audience with. I want to make the main focus of this video looking at a selection of her posts talking about this relationship and how she was groomed, and I'm going to bring in some stories from other victims too and take a look at what experts say on this topic of grooming, and hopefully we can use this as a moment to learn and educate ourselves and others about this really damn serious topic. So the very first thing she posted was the beginning, our story, with the caption, "And this is just the beginning of our story. Can't wait to share more with you all." She says, "We met May 11th, 2014. I was 15 at the time and Isaac was 21. Red flag, red flag, red flag, right? A 6-year age gap may not be that huge when you're my age or when you're 40. If I'm 32 and I'm dating a 38-year-old, not a big issue. Not a big age gap at all. If you're 40 and dating a 46-year-old, not a big issue. If you're 50 and dating a 56-year-old, not a big issue, right? But at these young ages of 15 and 21, that is huge. Huge. She was still a child. She was still in school. She was still living with her parents. Well, not in school, but homeschooling, still in education. She was still living with her parents. And he was a fully grown man running his own business. The differences in life experience, in maturity, in physical development, in mental development are insurmountable. And what could they possibly have in common? How could there not be a massive power imbalance here? You're in different stages of life, different stages of physical development. It is just inherently wrong. There is no world in which this is not problematic and harmful to the child involved. Her next slide reads, got engaged May of 2015, so literally 1 year after they first met, and got married November 2015. Okay, so they got married within 19 months of meeting each other. That's quick for anyone, never mind for a literal child. So he waited until she was 16 to propose, and then very quickly married her when she was just 17. It's horrifying. And the rest of this post is just about her listing off her numerous pregnancies. She got pregnant within the first year of marriage, I believe. Yes, she did. But sadly that baby passed away when she was just over a week old. Absolutely no one should have to go through that, and she has nothing but my sympathies for dealing with the loss of a child. It's horrifying, it's absolutely horrible, and I know you will be, but I just ask that you're all respectful about that in the comments. I'm sure you will be. So, the thing that is a little concerning to me though is, right, it says, our first daughter was born February 27th, 2017, then passed away March 8th, 2017. Our rainbow baby was born February 2018, which means she got pregnant in May 2017, just 8 to 12 weeks after giving birth, and just 7 to 11 weeks after losing her baby. That just cannot be good for her body, right? I understand she was grieving, and I don't want to say replacement baby, that's not the right word, but the idea of a rainbow baby, a second chance, wanting to rush into that, I understand emotionally, absolutely do, not judging her for that at all, that's not the issue here. My concern is how she was just 18 years old, barely an adult, and she was putting her body through this much stress and trauma of going through one pregnancy, which is traumatic enough, giving birth, then going through the trauma of baby loss, and then 7-8 weeks later, getting pregnant again and going through a whole other pregnancy. That sounds dangerous as hell for her body. The strain and stress that must have put her through, God, my heart just breaks. Absolutely does. And then over the next few years, she had 4 more children. July 2019, again, she got pregnant just months after giving birth. Bless her. October 2020, oh my god, these are barely a year apart. Thankfully she had a break here with March 2023. And this year we'll be 10 years together as husband and wife. That's our story in a nutshell so far. Marriage, kids, growth, God, it's a wild ride. And I'll be sharing more of it here, and I'd love to have you along for it. Like and follow to catch the rest. In one of her next posts, there's another post I was going to talk about later, but I think it's better to talk about it now. Give me 1 second to find it. She wrote, point of view, you've been pregnant for roughly 1,400 days out of 2,557. The poor woman and the strain that must have put on her body just... my uterus wants to shrivel up just thinking about it. I can't imagine what her poor organs have gone through. Like, for over half of that time, her organs will have been smushed and moved and pushed around. Like, the strain on her bladder, the strain on her downstairs bits, the strain on her... God, one pregnancy alone can cause hair loss, tooth loss, lack of bone density. Like, if she was puking and had morning sickness, like, all of this stuff, like, this poor woman. We will come back to this later, because there is a point I want to make about pregnancy, but let's cover the actual relationship first. Okay, so this post was called Meeting Him Part 1, and this is the story of how they met. Or rather, as I like to put it, the story of how he groomed her. This microphone just does not want to sit still. I'm stressing today. This was a terrible idea for a setup. Screw me being comfy in a chair. Okay, so she writes, I couldn't find anyone at church to sit with except my friend Claire, so I sat with her, with a tiny secret agenda because Isaac was sitting in the row in front of us. He took his suit coat off during church and I could see his muscles through his shirt. That was truly my first time ever seeing stuff like that. Take note of that. We got to talk after church where he told me he thought I was 21. I was 15 at that time. We ended up knowing so many of the same people and had a lot to talk about. And here's the thing. Sorry if you can hear my washing machine. It is very normal for teenage girls to have crushes on older men, but it is not okay or normal for these men to reciprocate. If you have made a mistake about someone's age, that's fine. But the minute she said to him, oh, I'm actually 15, that should have been his cue to get out of there, you know? He should have been like, that's it, I'm gone, you're a child. Or if he does want to stick around and talk to her, step into a parental, older brother, supportive mentor type of role. Not, I'm going to keep flirting with this child. Yeah? I've said it before, but as the adult in this situation, it was entirely his responsibility to look out for her well-being and her safety and not continue to pursue and take advantage of a child with a completely normal crush. You would be surprised how many abusers do not understand this though and somehow blame the children in this situation. It's insane. So Sonia Orchard wrote about this. She wrote about her experience of being groomed by an older man in his 20s when she was just 15 in her memoir, Groomed, a memoir about abuse, the search for justice, and how we fail to keep our children safe. In this book, she not only talks about the man who groomed and raped her as a child, because let's be honest, that's what it was, because she was unable to consent because she was a child, but she also talks about how normalised this behaviour was back then when she was a teenager. So she writes, another factor that helps enable child sex abuse is if inappropriate sexual behaviour between adults and children has been normalised for the child. It is fair to say that inappropriate sexual behaviours between adults and children had been normalised at my school. Teachers were fraternising, and in a couple of instances having sex with students, and the other adults who might have stepped in to let us know this was not okay, didn't. Maybe they thought that girls like us drinking at nightclubs were old enough to make our own choices, that we were asking for it. By the time I met S, the man who groomed her, at 15, 2 of the crucial elements found among child sex abuse sufferers were already in place. I was isolated from my family, and sexual behaviours between adults and minors were normal to me. So when S turned up, looking like the good guy, the caring guy, offering safe harbour, of course my mum and I saw him, like my many good school grades, as a sign that after a difficult few years I was now thriving. She goes on to give an example of meeting an old teacher from her school when she was much older, like in her 30s-ish, and he remembered her in this way. A man who'd been a casual teacher at our school when I was a student turned up. The connection was quickly made. "Sonia Orchard, I remember you," he exclaimed in front of everyone. "You used to think you were so hot, didn't you? Strutting around in your little school dress." He sashayed about, batted his eyes mockingly, rising to the guffaw of the audience. It wasn't a little school dress. It was my school uniform. And I wasn't strutting around. I was going to school. What was I meant to be wearing and doing? But he wasn't listening. He was still carrying on with his entertaining stories of being a young male teacher at a co-ed school, and I was being humorless and touchy. And for those listening on, his tales were more amusing. It was a party after all. No one wants to hear from a jaded Lolita. And that's the thing, isn't it? It's so common for these older predators to see literal children as instigators, and it's completely wrong. They tell themselves if they're attracted to a child, then that must mean the child has some sort of power over them, and it's absolute nonsense. As Sonia went on to write, things look different from different perspectives. From my point of view, I was a shy kid with a difficult home life, doing well at school, and with an active social life. I was starting to get a lot of attention in a way I hadn't been used to getting, nothing more. He, her abuser, saw something different. A teenage girl making the most of her much mythologized teen girl power. And the fact that that's what so many of these men see when they look at a schoolgirl is a problem that society has barely started to grapple with. Teenage girls are vulnerable. They are children, and they need to be protected, guided, and educated by the men in their community, not preyed upon. I couldn't have put it better myself. She goes on to write, because girls start to believe this propaganda themselves. They start to think that they're actually powerful and that they're on a great thing. I thought I was on a great thing, because attention, especially if a girl isn't getting a lot of it elsewhere, feels good. I've spoken to many women who were abused during their teens and often found that they only start to question the stories they'd told themselves decades later. Stories about how powerful they'd been, that they'd wanted and consented to all they'd experienced. And that's it, isn't it? A child is never, ever asking for it. A child is never the one to blame. As an adult, if a child ever has a crush on you, the only way to respond is to shut it down. It is that simple. There's no, "Ooh, but what if?" "Ooh, but no." No. You do not reciprocate. You do not lead them on. You do none of it. It's not that difficult. A child, no matter how they may feel or how much society has lied to them, never has power in that situation. That is just a lie predators tell themselves to excuse their predatory behavior. And look at how Kendra worded her experience. "This was truly my first time ever seeing muscles on a man. She wasn't just a child, she was a naive and inexperienced child. There is no way we can read this and not see that his 21, almost 22-year-old man took advantage of a naive child. I don't care if he thought she was older at first. The minute he found out she was 15, and he did that day in that conversation, he should have shut it down. He should have walked away." So after meeting at church, the adult Isaac did what a lot of groomers do, and he started to befriend and groom her family. And then he gave her an excuse to be around him more by offering her a job. This is textbook groomer behavior. My brother worked for him the next 2 days, and then I started working for him too, cutting trees and pouring concrete. So he's like, let's get the family on side by offering the brother a job. Let's get her on side and around me by offering her a job. In her book Grooming and the Sexual Abuse of Children, Anne-Marie McAlladin writes that trust plays a key role not in the offender's interactions with the child, but also with their family and within the local community. And who's more trusted than, such a good local businessman offering these teenagers a job? What a good guy. She goes on to write that sex offenders, to avoid suspicion, find ways in which they can legitimately have contact with children and acquire power over them. Sex offenders not only groom children, but also their families and the local communities, perhaps as the means of beginning an association with the child. The grooming of the child's family also has a dual purpose: securing the confidence and trust, and thus the cooperation of the carers in gaining access to the child, and reducing the likelihood of discovery by creating an atmosphere of normality or acceptance. Kendra often says that Isaac was different, special, and not like the other predators, But in reality, reading her experience, he displayed all the textbook grooming signs. He gained the trust of her family. He gave himself a legitimate excuse to be around her by offering her job. However, that also put him in a position of power and authority over her. And while he has all of this power imbalance going on, and he's grooming the family and the community and making them trust him too, he uses this as an excuse to seduce her and prey on her. It is textbook groomer. But that's the thing, isn't it? People didn't notice because so often predators don't look like predators. I mean, what does a predator even look like, you know? They use these legitimate reasons to be around children while they're grooming and abusing them, so it makes them even harder to spot. They look like nice, normal guys. Or women. Let's not forget women as well. Ann Salter wrote a book called Predators, and she is someone who has, throughout her career, interviewed and worked with and given counselling and therapy to hundreds, if not thousands, of predators, including plenty of men who have sexually assaulted numerous children. She wrote a whole book about this experience, and it's honestly one of the hardest, most difficult things I've had to read, but it was really eye-opening. In her book, Predators, she writes that we give permission for children to be around the people grooming them because we don't recognise these people as predators, because we think sex offenders are monsters, and surely we'd recognise a monster, wouldn't we? That nice young minister who runs all the youth programmes, the ones with the crooked smile and the thatch of brown hair over his brow, the one who visits the elderly and gives the poor money from his own funds, surely not him. He couldn't be a child molester with 90 victims while he's still in his 20s. That good-looking, polite young man who just wants to see the motorcycle for sale in your backyard, surely he couldn't be a rapist with a knife in his hip pocket waiting for you to turn your back to pull the cover off. She goes on to write that sex offenders are notorious for bonding with a child and using that relationship to manipulate the child into having sex with them. And that is exactly what an adult man who pursues and seduces a 15-year-old child is doing. And that is the behaviour that Kendra is normalising in these posts. Not just normalising, romanticising, glamorising. Putting on a pedestal as the pinnacle of a love story. And it's not a love story. It's a story of abuse. And when she paints her experience as a love story, when she thinks that marrying the man who groomed her and having kids with him is a happy ending we should all aspire to, when she repeatedly posts about how handsome he is and how hot he is and how he's not like the other guys, she is sending out an incredibly dangerous message to other young people. If he's hot, he couldn't possibly be a predator. If he marries her, he couldn't possibly have groomed her. If he has kids with her, then no, it wasn't really statutory rape, was it? Except all of that is lies. As Anna Salter writes, the fact that she loves him doesn't mean that he's innocent. Groomers and child abusers often make their victims think that they love them. It is literally part of the grooming process. And that's what makes it so hard for so many victims to even realise that they are victims in the first place. It's the same for Alison Wood, who recounts being groomed and abused by one of her teachers in her book, Being Lolita. That's one I've recommended and spoken about a lot on this channel, and it's a difficult but fantastic read, horrifyingly familiar. And again, like as Sonia Orchard wrote herself, it's not uncommon for people to hide abuse from themselves and ignore the signs of trauma. She herself wasn't able to recognise her signs of abuse until she was in her 40s, but the negative effects that the trauma had been having on her life, her mental health and her relationships had always been there. She just didn't know what the cause was. She didn't know how to name it. She writes, "It's surprising that it took so long, until my early 40s after my father died, for me to reevaluate this relationship I had when I was 15, to reframe it as abuse. Surprising, but not unusual. If you read up on the many stories of grooming that are published in the papers each month, you'll notice that not only are the stories usually from adults reflecting decades after the abuse, but it's also not uncommon for these adults to report that they did not realise the experience was abuse at the time. Many people, especially teenagers like me, considered their abuse to be a regular relationship, whatever that is. So just because a person like Kendra, for example, may be currently saying, oh, this is fine, it hasn't affected me negatively, this is a wonderful experience, that's not to say what he did to her wasn't inherently wrong and has likely caused some trauma that she may reevaluate in the future. We can't know for sure, but I wouldn't be surprised if Kendra had certain signs of trauma that she isn't even currently aware of. And the thing is, like, you can tell from how she writes, Kendra thought she was so grown up, she was ready for this relationship. She's not like the other kids. She didn't realise how young and vulnerable she was at the time. She still doesn't realise. And so to quote Sonia's book one more time, the fact that habitual, especially fawning behaviours can kick in when a person feels under threat helps explain why many women and children are highly vulnerable to sexual assault and abuse, as these two groups have traditionally been conditioned to appease powerful people. During my childhood, children were raised to always defer to adults, to be obedient and not talk back. These behaviours around adults became habit, especially when under stress. These habits of childhood, though, are not just taught to children. Appeasing adults is likely an evolved behaviour. Clearly, though, in the wrong circumstances with the wrong people looking after them, they become highly vulnerable to abuse. After being assaulted by an adult, their response may be to simply smile back and promise to never say a word to anyone. Or, in the case of Kendra, say this is what she wanted. She was the one pursuing him. Yeah, this is totally fine and normal love story. This is why sex between an adult and child must always be considered abuse. There is a power disparity between the two, and a child, being dependent upon adult care, is highly likely to place pleasing the adult, especially an adult they're attached to, above their own feelings of discomfort. A child's intimacy needs in relation to adults relate to attachment and care, not sexual gratification, and their drive to fulfill these needs can be easily manipulated. And this is what I mean, right? Even if Kendra thinks it's okay, despite having been groomed by an adult, their relationship was still wrong. He is still predatory. A 20-something-year-old man pursuing a 15-year-old child is always inherently wrong and harmful. There is always a power imbalance that will cause harm. Meanwhile, in Kendra's story, she goes on to talk about how he was absolutely the one pursuing her. She says, he definitely expressed interest before I did, but this was the first time a guy had showed interest in me, so it was new territory for me. Of course it was new territory. You were a child. You were a naive, inexperienced child. And this man took advantage of that. And again, she's admitting he was an adult pursuing a child. This is predatory behaviour. She says, my parents caught onto the attraction, so they quickly kept me from working with him anymore. And this is how it started. It was scary, magical, exciting, and so many other things. And I would say good for these parents, because keeping her away from him, great, wonderful, we'd love to see that. However, they didn't actually manage it, as we will go on to see in her next post. We can't know for sure how exactly the parents came around to being okay with this adult man pursuing their child. But as we mentioned earlier, what a lot of predators and groomers do is also groom the family and the communities and build trust with them in order to get more access to the child. So did he just win the parents over by acting like a good guy? Was he manipulating the parents in some way, to make them falsely believe that his pursuit of a child was somehow normal? I don't know, we can't say, because we don't know exactly what changed. We just know something did change. So in part 2, this is Meeting Him part 2, in the caption she writes, there's so much I could say about that year we talked. I want to be as real and honest with you guys. I was inspired by one of my friends to share our story. I personally didn't think it was that unique, but I will share it anyway. To me, it was almost like that's just how it was. So we started talking in the evenings on the landline phone my parents had. Talk about no privacy. So despite her parents trying to keep her away from him at first, he was still pursuing her and having private phone calls with her. And again, I'm sorry, but I have to ask, what adult man running a business of his own has anything to talk about with a 15-year-old child for that long? No. I look back to how I was at 21 and I was an entirely different person to who I was at 15. I wouldn't have anything in common with a 15-year-old at that age. No. Again, textbook grooming. And it goes on. Occasionally I could talk my parents into having him over in the evenings where we could get a little private talk. And I remember as things progressed between us, thinking, how did I land this guy? Why would he pick me? Because you were a child, you were vulnerable, you were an easy target. Did you want me to go on? He got to travel with us to a few vacation spots during the year we talked. One time we flew to Colorado, and that was the first deep conversation we've ever had. He was always so sweet to me, bought me a huge birthday card and flowers at random, and he was such a gentleman. So clearly he was going down there, he's such a nice guy route. Nice guys can't be predators, and I just find hearing this so damn concerning. It's so common for people to turn a blind eye to predatory behaviour because that the predator seems nice on the surface. Oh, he seems respectful. Oh, look, he bought her something. No. Also, the big gifts and stuff like that feel a little love bomby, don't they? But as Anna Salter writes, and warns, should I say, niceness and likability will override a track record of child molestation any day of the week. Likability is such a potent weapon that it protects predators for long periods of time and through almost incomprehensible numbers of victims. It is a misconception that child molesters are somehow different from the rest of us outside their proclivities to molest. They can be loyal friends, good employees, and responsible members of the community in other ways. And this is what I mean, we can't just ignore his behaviour because he's such a nice guy, he's got a job, he seems really sweet. I don't care how nice someone is, nice men don't pursue children. And the other scary thing is that being a nice guy can protect these predators even after their behaviour is called out as abuse and grooming, because people don't want to ruin the life of a nice guy. Oh, look, he's got a job, he's got a family, he's so sweet, you don't want to ruin his life. What about the life of the child that he ruined already? No one care about that? No, they don't. In her memoir Groomed, Sonia Orchard writes about her experience of going to the police about the adult man who groomed her when she was 15, and she did this, she reported it, the police took it seriously, and she finally told one of her friends about it, and this is the conversation that happened. I told her weeks earlier about calling the police, but at that stage I was unsure about going further with it, so I explained excitedly what I'd just done. There was silence on the other end of the phone. Then, "You sure you want to do this?" "Yeah, why not?" "Well, it was a long time ago." "So? When is too long ago to matter?" "Well, that's just it. I don't know, we all did stupid stuff when we were young. This isn't just stupid stuff, it's criminal stuff." "Yeah," she said skeptically. "We did a lot of illegal stuff back then, and I knew you then. You were pretty mature. You wanted to be doing those things." I could feel myself bristling. I didn't know what I wanted. I was a child. "It's just a really big thing to be doing. Do you know anything about his life now?" "Not really. He's in Melbourne." "Has he got a family?" "One kid, I think, maybe a teenager." "Jesus, son, it'll destroy his life." I struggled to come up with a response. Everything she was saying was, as far as I could tell, all true, but I also knew it wasn't that simple. There was more to this than what she understood, yet I didn't know if I had the ability to explain, if I even understood myself. "I feel like you're more worried about him and his well-being than me and mine," I said. "I mean, do you always worry about the welfare of criminals? Do you worry about burglars and murderers getting in trouble? Just because someone's broken the law, it's no reason to not have compassion for them." Which is kind of horrifying, isn't it? Like, in some cases, yeah, I mean, like, I have compassion for some criminals, right? Like, if someone steals food for their family, I have compassion for that. I'm not going to blame them for that. But if someone's molesting a child, there's no good reason for it. There's no excuse for it. And a person reporting that isn't ruining their life. Them committing the crime ruined their life, and that's their own fault. There was another example of this in her book as well. So she wrote, "I tried to explain to a friend who didn't understand my motivation. It was child abuse, I told them." "Well, legally, yes," they conceded. "But was it? Really?" "Yes, it was." "I'm sorry, you hadn't mentioned abuse before." I didn't know what else to say, how to explain. And this is the thing, why do so many people just not believe victims? Why is it, "Oh, was it really, was it really?" You don't get this with other crimes, do you? And why do people always have so much more compassion for the predators than those they abused? I constantly see men online talking about why we should never believe victims of sexual assault straight away because what if a woman is lying? It'll ruin a man's life. And sure, I admit, false accusations are incredibly problematic, but they're also incredibly rare. They do not happen very often. And secondly, let's be real, most people accused of sexual assault legitimately never even have their life ruined, never mind with a false accusation. So, did you know, only about approximately 5% of all rapists ever spend a day in jail, and fewer still spend any significant time there, according to Anna Salter. It's always, "But what about the abuser? Why are you trying to ruin their life? What if he didn't do it?" And never, "But what about the victim, whose life has already been ruined, and now, by not believing them, by questioning them, you are re-traumatizing them all over again. What about them?" Sonia Orchard questioned why so few people report sex crimes in general, and she found that when female rape victims who do not report were asked about their primary reason for not reporting, 33% responded that they did not regard the incident as serious enough. 26% felt ashamed or embarrassed, 22% didn't think there was anything the police could do, and 22% did not know or think the incident was a crime. She goes on to say, in general, there's a sense that these women don't want to create a problem, don't want to be seen as a problem, don't want to be a problem. They want to manage it themselves because they feel that this way they can just make it go away. They feel that bringing it out into the open won't help. If anything, it'll make it worse, which is something I completely relate to. Like, I get that completely. And I think when we repeatedly, because I've been the victim of certain crimes and decided not to pursue legal action any further because, one, there's nothing people can do to take it away. You just want to bury your head in the sand and pretend it's not happening. You don't want to be questioned and blamed for the crime that happened to you. Like, it's re-traumatizing, it's horrific. And I think the problem is when we repeatedly tell women, but he's such a nice guy, why would you want to ruin his life by reporting the actions that he did to you? We are just making it all worse. We're making it harder for people to report, harder for people to get justice, and easier for these people to go on and victimize other people. So Sonia went on to write, it's worth acknowledging that many of the elements of the legal system that I found most excruciating to deal with were there explicitly to avoid miscarriages of justice. Blackstone's principle, that is, it is better that 10 guilty persons go free than one innocent suffer, is a central principle of our legal system, and it's often wheeled out when discussing the laws around sex crimes. It's a proposition that few people would argue with. However, there's little doubt that such a dogged embrace of this idea makes getting a successful prosecution difficult. There's another problem with society's easy acceptance of this principle. Innocent people are suffering. There is more than one way to suffer, and getting convicted of a crime is just one of them. Sex crime victims are innocent, and when we refuse them justice, they may not go to jail, but they suffer tremendously. Further, an unpunished abuser carries the potential and likelihood of reoffending, therefore punishing more innocents. So how far are we, as a society, willing to push Blackstone's ratio? How much are we willing to punish victims who come forward by failing to take their crimes seriously, making them endure horrific judicial processes, thereby discouraging others from coming forward, providing protective measures to the accused that hamper a prosecution's case, and making the bar for prosecution obscenely high in order to protect the suffering of a person accused of a sex crime? And that is something that I really, really want you to think about, because it's such a damn important point. Kendra went on in a post saying, we grow closer and started to get serious. I was still 16 at this time. I honestly never felt that young though. But you were that young. The saddest part of us talking was how many people tried to keep me from a relationship with him. Now looking back, I understand some of their concern, but he's proven so much better than I could have ever imagined. He tells me I was perfect for him, and I tell him that ain't no one could have put up with me like he has. I'm so glad that I pushed all the negativity to the side and pursued him anyway. He loved the Lord and loved me and was so hardworking. I find this so damn concerning. There were clearly people around her trying to help her, but this guy just manipulated Kendra and her family and everyone that mattered. I'll remind you by quoting Sonia Orchard, grooming can be used to manipulate. If a victim is vulnerable, grooming can become brainwashing. Grooming is about using one's charm, one's power to win someone over, someone less powerful than you. When you've groomed someone, they're under your spell, ready to be manipulated. If you've done a good job, they don't realize they've been groomed. They think it's something else. I thought it was love. I was a child and thought this adult male loved me as an equal. There was love involved, but not the love that I thought. I think he loved that I was a child. Easy to control, available to him. And sadly, this is exactly what I see in Kendra's post too. Can you imagine if people spoke this way about other crimes? You know, this idea of the victim asking for it, you know, being mature for her age, so it was okay, all this sort of thing, you know. What if, like, it was someone saying, people tried to persuade him not to beat up the homeless man, but he said the homeless man was special. He said he was different to other homeless people. He was actually asking to be beaten up. And, you know, Isaac was such a nice guy after all. It's not like he'd intentionally hurt anyone or commit a crime, so maybe the fact that he did it this time is okay, right? Maybe he should beat up this innocent homeless man. I haven't even heard the innocent homeless man complain about this, so he must have liked being beaten up. It can't have hurt him that much. And besides, the homeless man was strong for his age. He could take it, right? Do you know what I mean? Any other violent crime against a vulnerable person would be taken seriously. People wouldn't be using these arguments. But the minute it's a violent crime against a child or a sexual crime against a child, people still somehow find a way to blame the victim. Anyway, Kendra has continued to post about her relationship on Instagram, now moving on to their engagement. He proposed when she was just 16, exactly a year after they first met. This post was our engagement part 1. Today was exactly 1 year since we met. I was told that Isaac's family was having a picnic at Norris Dam, and there was some of the church people and some other friends were going to be there. I was so oblivious to everything then. Isaac rode with us out there. Everything seemed normal, no hints or anything I would have noticed. Then, shake my head. I know what that means. I'm down with the kids. I remember talking and waiting for food to finish. Then, it came time to pray. My dad prayed. Big mistake. Good thing I was oblivious. So much of this just goes over my head, to be honest. In his prayer, he asked special blessing on me and Isaac. I remember thinking this was a smidge weird, but it also kind of seemed like something my dad would say, so I went with it. I'm sorry, but her writing is evidence of why apparently homeschooling does not work. Her grammar is so poor. She's not a good written communicator. I just wish she'd had more of an education and not been groomed by a man and skipped out on her education, you know? Isaac told me later he couldn't believe my dad said that and was so scared I would catch on what was about to go down. We ended up just eating and chatting and nothing weird happened. I mean, why would it? It was just a family picnic. Isaac told me some of them were going up to the lookout and asked if I'd like to go, so we loaded up in the van. He said he wanted to get some pictures with me, and that view was beautiful. I'm sorry, but the fact her family was so okay with an adult man proposing to a 16-year-old child is insane. And that they were all there to support it. Like, do better. It's hard because I kind of know the family... It's hard because I kind of know the family were manipulated too. But again, they're adults. Do better. Protect your children. So she made a part 2 to this. This is kind of hard to read. It's orange on a grey background. We drove up to the lookout, just me, Isaac, and 2 of our friends. We got out and the friends started snapping some pictures. I remember walking towards the other side of the lookout and I looked down in the grass and saw a cute little sign. I said, "Oh look, there's a will you marry me sign." When I turned around, Isaac had gotten down on his little knee. I was kinda in shock. My first thought was, do my parents know what's happening? And of course they did. Again, shame on these parents. Do better for your child. And of course her first thought was, do my parents know? Because she was a child. Of course she's going to be thinking about what her parents think. If he proposed to an adult woman, that probably wouldn't have been her first thought, because, you know, she's an adult. And I'm sorry, but even if he was another 16-year-old proposing to her, this is still too young for anyone to be getting married and committing their entire life to someone, especially someone you've only known for a year. You don't even know who you really are at that age. You are definitely going to change. Your partner is going to change. It's completely okay to wait for a few years if you think you're going to be with someone long-term at that age and just see what happens. I was so happy as I entered into this new phase of life. Isaac was exactly who I needed, and I wouldn't understand that until a few years later. Maybe because you're a child, and you couldn't possibly know the full extent of what you were agreeing to. There is no way she could give informed consent to this. We ended up driving back down and went for a walk to take more pictures, and it was one of the best memories of my life. Haters will hate and say this or that, and concerned readers will be concerned about your well-being. Social media only sees what I post. They don't know us or our heart. Our story is a rare one, but one that I pray God can use to encourage others to follow the Lord and not give in to societal pressures. True, we can only see what you post on social media, and what you do post is damn concerning. I'll remind you again, there is no context that we can see outside of these posts that makes an adult man seducing a 15-year-old child okay. There is no context that makes that okay. As Sonia Orchard writes, there's another reason why children are so much more vulnerable to grooming, and that is due to another biological dynamic that they are in the grips of, a behaviour that can be very easily muddled with courtship and grooming: their need for care. Children and teens are not simply mini adults. They have wired-in specific needs very different to those of adults. Children and teens are highly dependent beings, unable to fully resource, provide for, or fend for themselves in the world. This makes human children completely different to other young ape primates who are either fiercely and usually physically attached to their mothers or once weaned very independent. Humans are unique among the primates in that the young require over a decade of ongoing care after weaning. These care requirements are well beyond what one or even really two parent or adult carers could comfortably manage. The age at which children become adults is not clear-cut, she writes. It's a gradual process which will vary between cultures and between individuals. Some individuals may never become fully independent and may remain on the lookout for and ready to attach to carers throughout their lives. What's clear though is that while a person is dependent, needing care and resources from another in order to survive, they will be hyper alert to the presence of potential carers and ready to attach to them if triggered with attachment behaviours. And this will be especially true if they are lacking stable attachments. So basically, she was super vulnerable, he took advantage of this, and there is no possible context which she would give that would change the fact that she was a child and in no way ready to be in a romantic or sexual relationship with an adult. It's impossible to say when Kendra would have definitely become an adult, or when she did become an adult, or if she's become an adult, to be honest. But what is very clear, and what we can say with no uncertainty, is that when they met when she was 15, she was not an adult. When he proposed to her at 16, she was not an adult. She was absolutely not in a developmental state where she could fully give informed consent about what was happening to her, what she was agreeing to. This is just a fact. She wrote in a post, "It's okay to be different. After all, the Bible does say, if the world hate you, ye know that it hated me before it hated you." And I again asked that she please stop normalizing and romanticizing this and making everyone think that this is okay if it happens to you. By normalizing grooming in this way, she is literally putting other children in danger. She says, to be in the world but not of the world, it's hard, but we have a duty to be a light in the darkness. Follow along for the rest of our story. Thanks for tagging along. She also made a post about what it was like to be married in high school. Now this is a little different because she was homeschooled, so it's not like she was around her peers every day. In fact, it seems that once she got married, she was even more excluded from people her own age, and her education was neglected as a result. She writes, "I got engaged and married while still in high school. I was homeschooled. I had that flexibility. The whole year we courted, I would get up early and my school would take around 4 hours. Then by noon, I'd be done and would help my mum around the house and yard, and then spend time with Isaac in the evenings. We got engaged in my senior year by May of 2016. Being married. Being married and still in school was fun." It's just so poorly written, I'm sorry. This is not an advertisement for homeschooling, is it? "Being married and still in school was fun. It was like I was part of two worlds. I would go be with my best friend every day, but when he would go to work, I'd do my school. It worked. It was awesome. It's not normal, but sometimes normal is boring. Hashtag young wife life. Hashtag married at 17. Hashtag faith over normal. Hashtag unconventional but right. Oh, hashtag wife before diploma." No, I don't like that. I don't like that at all. Oh, hashtag homeschool to homemaker. I don't like that either. No. I do wonder, if she'd been around people her own age, would she have been more protected from him, or would he have just isolated her from them further? I don't know. I genuinely do not know. Sonia Orchard actually wrote about how dating adult men kept her isolated from her peers while she was in school. And she wrote, "By year 12, I was no longer seeing S, but was in a relationship with another older man and had already started to distance myself from many of my school friends. friends who'd been like family for the past 6 years. I was regularly smoking marijuana and drinking heavily every weekend. I didn't attend the school dances or other school events. How would I take a man older than some of my teachers to a school dance? I didn't feel I belonged to the world I'd been part of until recently. My family, my friends, my school. I told myself that this was okay, that I'd moved into a more grown-up world and was no longer among children who didn't understand me. Why would I want to go to a silly school dance anyway? She goes on to say, when friends reminisce about fumbling through a teenage date, going to the school dance, hanging out with their friends at university, or kicking off their careers, I feel like I'm talking to someone from another galaxy. I didn't do those things. As a child who'd never ventured far from my neighbourhood, never experienced much more entertainment than going to a cinema or roller skating rink, living off pocket money, going to school each day. Then almost overnight I was catapulted into a very adult world of all-night parties, live music, drugs, sex, binge drinking. All those little baby steps that you take each day as you move through adolescence to build up your confidence, your sense of self, your voice, your understanding of relationships. I missed them all. Drunk and stoned, I moved around the shadows of this adult world where I didn't belong. I survived it, but my years of teenage growth stopped, or rather never happened as they should. And as another example, Alison Wood writes about how she was already isolated from a lot of her peers and excluded from a lot of the people she went to school with when she was that age, and that's what made it easier for her teacher to groom her in the first place. So while Sonia's story and experience is very different to Kendra's and Alison's, the theme throughout it, or the thing that connects them all, is that all of them have been isolated from their peers. And like, call me crazy, but hearing a 16-year-old girl say that she did isolated homeschooling in the morning, would do chores for her parents in the afternoon, and then spend the evening with her husband is a little bit scary, isn't it? Or fiancé at the time, I guess. Yeah.
Hey all, editing me here, because I can't believe I forgot to write the script for one of the most important posts that I found, and I completely forgot about it because I'm a silly goose. But here she put on a post saying point of view. I think she misunderstands the whole point of view trend, but that's not the point. Point of view, you got married at 17 and people online were saying you were groomed. But what they don't know is he's never abused me. He tells me he loves me every single day. He works hard. We travel, we laugh, we're best friends. We've been married almost 10 years and the love just keeps getting better. No secrets, no control. That's not grooming. That's what happens when God writes your love story. And the caption for this is, we've been married nearly 10 years. I was 17, he was 23. That's when they got married. They met when she was 15, remember that. The internet calls that grooming, because it is. I call it grace. He's never once abused me. I'm sorry, but like, an adult man pursuing a 15-year-old girl is abuse. That is abuse. He tells me I'm beautiful, that I'm his dream girl. That's what grooming is. He works hard, protects us, provides for us. He's not controlling. I've never felt more free. We laugh, we travel, we have fun. We're growing together in love, faith, and family. Don't let the world define your story when God is the one who wrote it. So again, this just summarizes a lot of what I think I was saying in this section about her not being aware of how wrong it was, of normalizing grooming, of saying, well, it's just God's will, which is so damn dangerous for other teenage girls and children who might be reading this and seeing it, and just other women in general. It's a misunderstanding of what grooming is and a misrepresentation of it in a really dangerous way. And I can't believe I didn't include it in the script because I'm silly. I felt I should show it to you.
The final post I want to touch on is the one that we mentioned earlier in the beginning, the point of view, you've been pregnant for roughly 1,400 days out of 2,557. And like I think I said earlier, this reminds me so much of Carissa Collins, and I can't help but be concerned for her health. She first got pregnant at about 17 or 18-ish, and at that age, pregnancy can be so dangerous, because despite what some men claim, that is not a woman's peak fertility. A girl's body at that age is absolutely not developed enough to have a safe pregnancy when you're that young. Again, to quote Sonia's book, for those fond of evoking biology in these discussions, the justification for many men's longing for young female virgins is that a female's youth is a sign of high fertility. It's an argument that's been used for decades. Unfortunately, however, when we're talking about teenagers, it's simply untrue. A woman's fertility peaks around her early to mid-20s. When a girl gets her first period, she might not even be fertile, and she may remain infertile or with low fertility for a year or two, before her fertility slowly starts to climb. So if a male were really attracted to the most fertile partner, it would be a woman in her early to mid-20s. Funnily enough, it's what Isaac's age was at the time, not one in her teens. Secondly, if we're talking about biological drives to procreate, there's a lot more involved in reproduction than simply finding a fertile heterosexual partner, especially when it comes to offspring who require so much looking after. To ensure the survival of your genes, you need to make sure not just that you have offspring, but that your offspring survive to maturity. Given how tough it is to raise humans, the ideal reproductive partner will be someone not just fertile, but also good at nurturing and providing. Again, this rules out teenagers. She goes on to write that babies born to teenage mothers are also at greater risk of preterm birth, low birth weight, stillbirth, and neonatal death. The list of disadvantages continue. And again, I want to be incredibly sensitive when talking about Kendra's own loss of her first baby not long after she was born, but I do think it's important to point out how incredibly common this is amongst teenage mothers. I can't even begin to imagine how hard that must have been for someone so young to go through that, and I have nothing but sympathy and empathy and love for her for going through that. I just think it's another example of why this situation was so damn unfair on her. She shouldn't have had to go through pregnancy at such a young age, and she shouldn't have had to suffer from all the dangers that come with that. You know what I mean? But yeah, I think this is where I'm going to end this video. I know today it's been a really heavy one and a deep one, and I use Kendra as an example because she is a public figure talking about this. But honestly, this could happen to anyone. And the thing that I want you to take away from this mostly is understanding what grooming is, how it can happen to anyone, why it is so harmful and dangerous, how to spot the signs, and if you do spot them, reach out and help people so they don't have to go through this. Yeah, I think that's pretty much everything for now. But thank you so much for watching today. Thank you so much to everyone who helps support my channel and my work through Patreon and channel memberships and everything like that. I could not do this work without you, because so often videos like this will be demonetized, and your help and support just helps keep a roof over my head, keeps allowing me to spend time researching and making these videos and talking about such important topics. So I thank you all. I have nothing but love and respect for you, and I really, really damn appreciate it. For everyone else who's just been watching, thank you so much for your time. Please leave your comments below. Try and be respectful. Please don't send any hate towards Kendra. Yeah, and I think that's pretty much me done for today. Thank you so much for your time, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.